What's your biggest problem, assuming that you have one, when it comes to prayer? For me, it used to be time, in the sense that I just had too much stuff to do. Eventually, I think a combination of age and pain shifted that. Now it's when I do go to pray, very often I will begin by addressing God, our Father who is in heaven, who is so close to me. But then my mind drifts. And pretty soon, instead of talking to God, I am just thinking about stuff. And then very quickly that becomes worrying about stuff. The fundamental difference between worrying and prayer is when you're praying, you're actually talking to God. So you can be worrying, but as long as I'm worrying with God, talking to God about it, then it becomes prayer. Then it becomes a chance to be with Him. There's a book called Sacred Fire by Ronald Rolheiser. One of the chapters starts with a little poem called The Difference. I got up early one morning, rushed right into the day. I had so much to accomplish, so I didn't have time to pray. Problems just tumbled about me and grew heavier with each task. Why didn't God help me, I wondered? He answered, "You didn't ask." I wanted to see joy and beauty, but the day toiled on gray and bleak. I wondered why God didn't show me. He said, "But you didn't seek." I tried to come into God's presence. I used all my keys at the lock. God gently and lovingly chided, "My child, you didn't knock." I woke up early this morning and paused before entering the day. I had so much to accomplish, I had to take time to pray. Prayer is meant to connect us to divine energy so that we could have, like Jesus did, the power to do things, to love, to care about our enemies, to be generous with other people, to do the golden rule that we would not have on our own. And we're learning about that from the greatest teacher ever, Jesus, the greatest teaching ever, the Sermon on the Mount, to ask, to seek, to knock. And we have been doing that for the last several videos. I hope you've been a part of that journey together. And when we'll do it again today, you will take that one care that's deep on your own heart and bring it before God. Now, you may find, and this is the problem that I will often have, that I start by talking with God, and then pretty soon you end up with your mind drifting to 100 other things, or pretty soon you're not remembering that you're talking to God at all. So these thoughts are quite helpful to me. Again, this is from Richard's book. We nurse a naive fantasy, both about what constitutes prayer and how we might sustain ourselves in it. And what often lies at the center of this misguided notion is the belief that prayer is always meant to be full of fervor, interesting, warm, carrying spiritual insight, and carrying the sense that we are actually praying. Well, yeah, I kind of thought that was the idea. Wouldn't that be nice? Now, you're going to be glad to hear this. If you're anything like me, much to the relief and consolation of anyone who has tried to sustain a prayer life over a long period of time, the great prayers tell us that once we are beyond the early honeymoon stage of prayer, the single greatest obstacle to sustaining a life of prayer is, wait for it, boredom. The sense that nothing meaningful is happening. But that doesn't mean that we are regressing in prayer. And then he offers this picture. If you go day after day, week after week, year after year, to care for an aging parent in a nursing home, you'll find most of the conversations may not be real exciting. They may not be emotionally deeply expressive. They may be pretty ordinary. But year after year after year, what you will come to find is you know that person like nobody else does. It is the knowledge that comes only with presence. And it is that way with God. And that is why the one single, non-negotiable, indispensable, irreplaceable rule when it comes to prayer is just show up. Doesn't matter how you feel, doesn't matter what method that you are trying, doesn't matter whether or not it seems like a lot of outcomes are happening. The one rule is just show up. If you look at Jesus' life from when we see him at the beginning of his ministry and he goes into the desert, until right before the cross in the Garden of Gethsemane. He just shows up. I don't know about you. Often I will find it's the Gethsemane moments, the moments where I'm most desperate, where I'm most in pain, where I'm most aware of my need, that I am most driven to pray, and in an odd way, helped to remember that I'm talking with God. But that doesn't mean that I always want my life to look that way, and it doesn't mean that God always wants my life to look that way. Here's one more statement that I want to take from Rolheiser, and then I'll talk a little bit more about what we do when we pray. Prayer is lifting mind and heart to God. Prayer is not simply, he says, daydreaming or letting a stream of consciousness occur. It's lifting mind and heart to God. That means lifting up at any given moment exactly what is there and not what ideally might be there. It would be nice if we always felt warm, reverent, altruistic, full of faith, chaste, hopeful, connected with others in nature, happy about who we are and what life has dealt with us. But that is not the case. So if I'm going to be able to sustain a life of prayer with God, it's got to start with what's actually inside of me. What's the stuff that I'm genuinely concerned about? God has put me in charge of my own life. I pray about the plane that I'm actually on, as Dallas said one time. And if I pray about other planes, it would probably be planes that are real close to me. Now, that will often lead to a concern for folks. What if I'm praying about the right thing? Well, as long as I'm genuinely talking to God about it, He and I will work that out together. It's much better to pray about the wrong thing together with God than to worry about the right thing quite apart from God. And we see this over and over again in the Bible. If you look at Bible characters, it's pretty rare that they actually have these very pious thy will be done moments. Much more often, their prayer is, thy will be changed. I don't want what you want for me. And quite often that changes how God will deal with them. Two quick examples of this. In Numbers chapter 11, the people of Israel, they're in the wilderness. They've been eating manna because God's caring for them. But they want to go back to Egypt because they say, we're tired of this manna. We want meat to eat. And they tell Moses, and Moses tells God, and God has them all come together. You want meat? I'll give you meat. It's a really hilarious passage. You will eat it, not just 1 day, 2 days, 10 days, 15 days. Every day for a month, you will eat it till it is coming out of your nostrils, and you are sick of it. Another time, in I think it's 1 Samuel 7 or 8, Samuel is the prophet, is the judge before Israel, and they say, give us a king. And this is very painful to Samuel, and he goes to God, and God says, warn them about this. So Samuel goes back and say, if you have a king, you're going to take your sons, put them in the army, take your daughters, make them perfumers and bakers and worse. He will take a tenth of all that you have as though he were God. He will take your best servants. He will take your best horses. We don't care. Give us a king. Often it's the case in a nation when there's kind of chaos, they'll just say, we want a strong man to do everything. And in both cases, God says, all right, I will give you meat. All right, I will give you a king. Because God knows often it's the case with us where if we have a desire, we just can't let go of it. The only way to teach us how to get on with life is to let us experience the thing that we desperately want until we realize, oh, that's not really what I wanted. So don't worry about asking for the wrong thing. You and God can work that out together. The main deal is just show up and bring the concern of your heart to God. That's what we've been doing together. So I want to invite you to do that right now, one more time, in the community of prayerful love. Bring that concern of your heart that you've been praying for each day and talk with God about it. Our Father, who is so near us. And now speak with Him. And now, in our next time together, we're going to go on to the golden rule. And actually, it's a beautiful thing to see there's a very definite connection between Jesus' teachings on prayer, the community of prayerful love here, and what enables us to live out the golden rule that Jesus gives. But what I want to say to end this day is you just showed up. You've been just showing up. We've been showing up, standing with each other in prayer. That's a really good thing. I'm making the commitment. I will continue to just show up on this concern of mine, this care before God, until the matter is resolved or until I die. And I want to invite you to make that same commitment just between you and God. That's how things are in relationships. We stay with something until it is resolved. Just show up. Make it a golden rule day.
Hi, I'm Tim. I'm a part of the team here at Become New, and this week is all about prayer. So we want to remind you and encourage you to be praying each day this week. And in fact, if you've got a prayer request where you could use a little extra help praying for that request, we are here for you. You can text it to us at the number 855-888-0444. There's a group of us that meet each weekday, Monday through Friday, to pray for viewers just like yourself. If you'd like to be a part of that team, you can let me know by emailing me at connect@becomenew.com or texting me to that same number, 855-888-0444, if you want to join the prayer team. If it's your first time, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. You can also head over to our website, becomenew.com, where we have over 700 10-minute teachings all about the person you're becoming. You can even subscribe for our emails that accompany each video. We're glad that you're here. We'll catch you next time.